Hello, my name is Keith. Welcome to my channel. It's April 21st, and it's a bit chilly for late April. But today, we're going to be looking for fiddleheads. And here's our first set of fiddleheads. These are interrupted fern. And it is very difficult to know fiddleheads. I just know where these are planted in my garden, because that's where we are here in the backyard. So I know what fiddleheads these are. Now, not many books about ferns talk about fiddleheads, because some ferns are difficult to distinguish even when they're fully mature, let alone when they're less than teenagers just getting started at the beginning of spring. One attribute of these fiddleheads, though, is they're not the real tight crozier that you're used to, that you get in salad greens, the ostrich fern. Here you see we have like triangular pieces that will eventually become the fronds of the fern. But they're in a somewhat distinct shape. They have the cotton cover. A lot of fiddleheads do come up. You'll know that they're fern fiddleheads, at least, by knowing that they're covered in this cotton-like fibers as they come out of the ground. We'll see a very good example of that over on the cinnamon fern later. But you can see that we have these tight little bundles of little triangles, and you can see that those are going to become each of those will become the pinna at the side of the main rachis of the fern. Now these I don't think are interrupted. These are ostrich fern getting started. You can see the ostrich fern, the little round green right here. These little round green pieces. These will become the classic fiddleheads that everybody knows that you can put in the salads after you parboil them. You can't eat them raw. At least you're not supposed to, because the ostrich fern just loves it in here and goes in wherever it has a chance. But here we have some more of the interrupted fiddleheads, and they're a little bit fuzzy here on the stem, on the stipe. And that you see they're slowly starting to unfurl, and we're getting individual pinna as it unfurls and starts to climb up to its full height. And here's ones that are just getting started. Okay, so we have quite the clump here, and as again you can see how clumpy, without all the greenery and without all of the understory, you can see how the clumps are. You can see last year's clumps here, and now we're growing right next to it in a similar clump. And that's again how we can tell in the winter what kind of ferns, that we at least have ferns. Maybe not the exact fern, but here in New England we don't have a lot of different ferns, so you can kind of make a guess as to what they are. Sometimes these winter stalks might be a little different. Especially if we have these wintering over fertile fronds, which are the ostrich ferns, then you know exactly what they are. But here are the interrupted ferns just getting started over here. These are much farther along with these, and then we have another small clump here. So we're going to have quite the collection of corner here where we have the interrupted fern. And they're doing just fine, and they're going to be well on their way to showing us a good specimen come spring. Let's move on to ostrich fern. And we have our choice here in the garden. It goes on for a good 20 or 30 feet here of nothing but solid ostrich fern, so we can take our pick and choose as to what kind of specimens we want to look at. But here's the start of small ones, and we can see very, very little tiny leaves. We'll take some close-up pictures later as you can see, the individual leaves, they just get bigger. You know, they come out of they unfurl, and they just get bigger as they grow. Here's another one that has kind of laying on the ground, but you can see the crozier, or the spiral shape as it's coming out. Here we're just a little bit early to see the classic salad salad fiddlehead. About another week or two we'll have it, but we're seeing it getting going here. And here's the old clump. May or may not have something coming out of it, but now we're starting a new one here and a new one here. Here's one's a little bit more along the way, and then here's the fern growing up, and now we've got more little pinnas, because the ostrich fern has small little pinnas at the ground and get ever wider and wider until about 2/3 of the way up, and then it narrows and rounds off at the top to make the ostrich fern frond that gives it its name. Again, we have tiny little pinna that will just get bigger and bigger as the fern matures. Here we go again. More fiddleheads, and growing around this established clump. The individual plant will grow that classic vase. If we get enough stems, we'll have a really nice vase shaped to look down into, and then maybe the fertile frond will come up later in the season. Here we go. Here we are, almost looking like the classic salad fiddleheads that we're used to. And as you can see, it's well on its way to getting more ostrich ferns over here in this side of the garden. Here's our next fiddlehead coming up out of the ground. This is royal fern, and we have a nice big stand of royal fern here. You can see it's making much more progress here inside the middle. Again, we have this cottony covering. The royal fern is more blotchy with brown, almost rust stained like, versus some of the other ones that are much more white. You can also see it's flatter than what we were looking at in the interrupted fern. So again, you can kind of tell that they're different. Whether you'd be able to tell exactly which ones they were is going to take time, but since we know what this one is, this is royal fern, we're not taking any guesses. Let's get this piece of spruce tree out of the way so we can look at our emerging fiddleheads. And then here, as you can see, we see no pinna, so here the stipe is going to be quite long, and the royal fern has kind of a long stipe, and so we'll get up to here before we'll start seeing actual pinna and the part of the frond that we know is a royal fern. So this will be quite the clump, and we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 or 10 specimens coming up, making quite the collection of royal fern here. And here's our cinnamon fern fiddlehead. There we go, cinnamon fern fiddlehead. As you can see, again, these are quite cottony, but you can see they're much rounder. They're not nearly as rusty, much more white, and they're starting to emerge. They're usually the first ones to show up. They go into full spore mode on the fertile frond that gives it its name, with a big cinnamon spike of spores right in the middle, and this is going to be quite the specimen here. Again, they're starting to open up, a little similar to interrupted fern. Maybe not as easy to tell these two apart. from cinnamon and interrupted, but you can tell that they're different than the royal. They're more white and not quite as flat. So these have a bit to go, but they get going. Once they get going pretty well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And you can see we have this kind of mound here where we have this tuft. So we know that they've been here a while, and the tuft is, you can see it's kind of growing towards the edge. So they've been here before, and then they're slowly working their way and establishing their own little fiefdom in the garden to try to keep down other ferns. But we have some invasive ferns, we'll talk about those in a little bit, that are kind of invading their space. Again, cinnamon fern, fiddleheads, slowly coming up. And here is Christmas fern fiddleheads. These are quite the hairy stipes coming up out of the ground. We know it's Christmas fern by the flats that are laying down here. These are much more wrinkled than some of the ones I showed this winter. But again, we have the classic single cut, once cut fern with little tip on the end of each of the individual pinna. And during the winter they lie down, but we're going to get a new crop of cinnamon ferns starting right up here through the middle. We have one small set here, we have some more here, we have some more coming up, and some more down in the middle. We have even more down under here. If we dig a little bit, we'll probably find some more. Looks like we're going to get a good set of cinnamon ferns, and it looks like it's trying to crowd out and smother whatever else might be around. It's a well-established specimen, and they'll take care of itself. So again, we have the round spiral fiddlehead, and here we can tell these are definitely different. The stipes are all covered in hairs and in scale, and the fiddlehead is definitely of a different shape and doesn't have that white covering that we saw in the other fiddleheads. Let's talk about field horsetail. Unfortunately, I planted some, and it's now become a weed. These brown stalks with the round strobili on top, these are the fertile field horsetails. The spores are in those little structures called strobilus sitting on top. There's no chlorophyll, so all the energy comes from underground in the roots, and we have quite the crop. I mean, it's filling in all the space over here from last year, and it's gotten very weedy. It's tough to get rid of, unfortunately. I shouldn't have done it, but I did, and so I'm going to see what we might be able to do. May have to come in here with a rototiller. It may be the only way to get rid of them. The roots are deep, and it's tough to get rid of them. Here is the start of the sterile, which is where all the chlorophyll is. These will become about twice as tall as they are now, and will have a long, wiry leaf, or wirely thing coming out of each one of those, and giving it the classic field horsetail. We can see one starting to give it more of the classic shape here than the smaller, immature ones that we're seeing. Again, you can see some of these strobili are open and giving off the spores already. They'll be gone by the end of May. They're only here for a few weeks. So all these brown fertile stalks will disappear, and the sterile, wiry leaves will take over and cover the area from the looks of things. Maybe we'll get a handle on it, maybe we won't. Okay. That's the end of the fiddleheads for now. We're sitting in here in an, let's see if we can make this work. Here is a stand of sensitive ferns, and here is the fertile fronds that have wintered over. These hold the spores. They're separate structures than the classic things that you think are leaves, but they're really full structures. They're just specialized leaves. Now, if we tap them, I don't know if you can see it on the video, but if we tap them, we get a dust of the spores coming out. Let's see, they're almost done. Let's see if we can make these work. See if we can see a little dusting. Maybe I'll be able to catch a frame or two. But we have the dusting coming off of these spores. All right, well, it's too early for the sensitive ferns to start coming up. We don't see any signs of them coming up out of the ground yet. They'll be back. They'll be here later in the month. Maybe no. That's ostrich, I think. Doesn't look like we have any signs of sensitive ferns coming up yet. So that's the quick tour, late April, of the fiddleheads of my garden, and we'll show progress as the year goes by.